Buenas tardes, muchas gracias. Continuamos en este segundo foro internacional, La innovación en la justicia. A continuación presentaremos un video en el que mostramos que aunque es necesario innovar y adoptar la justicia y el acceso a la justicia a las diferentes tecnologías, este acceso no es igual. No es igual el acceso a la justicia, a las tecnologías. Hay muchísimas desigualdades, brechas
The same
tecnológicas,
for everyone. There are a lot
brechas
of inequalities,
económicas,
technological
brechas
gaps,
culturales
economic
que
gaps,
no permiten este
and
acceso
in
homogéneo.
cultural rights that do not
Tampoco hay un
allow
único
this to
concepto
be
ni una
homogeneous
única
for
justicia.
everyone. There
Y
is
de eso
also not a
hablaremos en este
single
video. Muchas
concept for
gracias.
everyone and the single access for everyone. Thank you.
La segunda edición del foro surge bajo la
The second
premisa de que
edition
la
of this
justicia
forum
debe
comes under the
evolucionar,
premise that justice
transformarse y
needs to
adaptarse a las
be
nuevas formas y mecanismos de hacer
changing and
justicia, no
adapt to the
siempre
new forms
judiciales.
and mechanisms of creating
Entender estas
justice
nuevas
that
formas y
are not
herramientas
always
permitirá
judicial.
consolidar sistemas de
Understanding these
justicia
new ways
adecuados,
and
con
tools
enfoque
allows
de
us to
derechos
create
humanos y
proper
perspectiva de
justice
género.
tools that have
Es
an
necesario
approach in
reconocer que mejorar la
human
justicia es
rights
complejo de
and
entrada,
gender.
debido a las
It's
desigualdades de
necessary
base a la que se
to
enfrentan millones de personas.
highlight that
En este
millions of people
sentido,
are
es importante
facing
saber que
these
la justicia se ha
inequalities. So it's
dividido en
important to
diferentes
know that
tipos con el
justice has
objetivo de
divided in
atender
different types
diferentes
with the
necesidades.
objective of addressing
La justicia
different needs.
distributiva se entiende como la distribución
Distributive justice
igualitaria de
is
los bienes
understood
en la
as the
sociedad. Busca
equal
promover una vida digna y
distribution
de
of goods in
bienestar para todos los
society. It looks
ciudadanos.
to promote a
La
good life
justicia
and
retributiva
welfare for
está
all
enfocada en
citizens.
impulsar a los ofensores
Retributive
o infractores a
justice is focused on
responsabilizarse de su actuar
encouraging
y resarcir
offenders
los daños
to
ocasionados a las
be
víctimas.
accountable for their actions
La
and
justicia
to pay for the
restaurativa se
damages to
enfoca en las
victims.
personas víctimas y en el
Restorative
interés de la sociedad en
justice is
restituir a las
based on the
personas que
welfare of
sufrieron
people, and
daños,
the interest
dejando
is
de lado
to
el
pay back
enfoque
to the people
punitivo de
who
la
suffered
justicia.
damage, leaving aside the
Se
punitive
le conoce
approach
como
of
justicia
justice.
transicional a toda la
Transitional
variedad de
justice
procesos y
is the
mecanismos
whole
asociados
variety
con
of
los intentos
processes
de
and
una sociedad
mechanisms that are
por resolver los
associated to
problemas
the
derivados de un
attempts of a
pasado de
society
abusos a
to
gran
solve
escala, a fin de que los
the past
responsables
of
rindan
abuses
cuentas
at a
de sus
large
actos,
scale, so
sirvan
that
a
the
la
people
justicia y se logre la
responsible can
reconciliación.
be held accountable and we can
La
reconcile.
justicia abierta es un modelo de
Open
gobernanza que
justice is
parte
a
del
model of
concepto de gobierno
governance that
abierto,
starts from the
que es un
concept of
mecanismo
open
basado en la
government, which is a
transparencia, la
mechanism
rendición de
based on
cuentas, la
transparency,
participación ciudadana y
accountability,
la innovación tanto
citizen
cívica como
participation,
tecnológica.
and civic
La
and
esencia de la
technological
justicia abierta
innovation.
es que la
The
ciudadanía
essence of
sea el
open
eje del
justice is
servicio
that
público de impartición
citizenship
de
is the
justicia
axis of the
y que se
public
atiendan
service
las
of
necesidades
justice,
ciudadanas en
and that
soluciones
the
innovadoras,
citizens'
que
needs
fomenten la
are addressed
transparencia en el
with
quehacer
innovative
institucional
solutions
con
that
una
encourage
visión
the
colaborativa
transparency
entre
of these
instituciones y
institutions with
ciudadanía.
a collaboration among institutions
Todos
and
estos tipos de
citizenship.
justicia reflejan la
All these
evolución de
types
la
of justice
ciudadanía hacia
reflect the
una sociedad
evolution of
más justa,
citizenship towards
segura,
a more
igualitaria
fair,
y
safe,
equitativa.
equal, and
En esta segunda edición
equitative
del foro
justice.
nos acercaremos hacia cada una de
In the
ellas
second
desde
edition of
diversas
the forum, we are
perspectivas,
trying to
siempre
approach
basados en el
each of
respeto a
them
los derechos
from different
humanos, la
perspectives,
diversidad y
based
el
on
respeto a
human
la
rights,
pluralidad.
diversity, and the respect towards plurality.
Bueno, continuamos con nuestro foro.
We are
Por
going to
favor,
continue with our
síganos en
forum.
nuestras redes de México
Please
Evalúa
follow
y
us
visite nuestra
on our
página
social media in Mexico Evalúa, and please visit our website
www.mexicoevalua.org, donde tenemos diferentes propuestas de análisis y de
www.mexicoevalua.org,
propuestas de
where we have
políticas
different
públicas para los
proposals of
temas de
analysis
coyuntura.
and
A
public policies for
continuación,
these topics.
hablaremos de justicia restaurativa
Now we are going to
y
talk about
retributiva,
restorative and
dos de las
retributive
justicias que
justice, two
presentamos en
of
este
the
video. Y
types of justices that
moderará
we
el doctor
presented in
Guillermo
this
Cepeda
video, and we are
Lecuona
going to
del
have
Instituto de Justicia Alternativa del
Dr.
Estado de
Guillermo
Jalisco,
Cepeda Lecuona from
con la
the Institute of
participación de
Alternative
Marta
Justice from
Angélica
Jalisco
Galicia Osorio,
facilitating, and we also
coordinadora de la
have the
Clínica de
participation of
Medios
Marta Galicia
Alternativos de
Osorio,
Solución de
coordinator of the Clinic
Conflictos
of
del
Alternative
Instituto
Media for
Tecnológico
the
Autónomo de
alternative means
México,
for conflict
Gema Barona
resolution,
Martínez,
Gema
del
Barona
Instituto
Martínez
Vasco de
from
Criminología,
the Institute of
Fátima Leonor
Criminology,
Gamboa Estrella,
Fátima
de X
Leonor
Justicia para
Gamboa
Mujeres.
Estrella from X
Le cedo la palabra
Justice
a
for
Guillermo
Women.
Cepeda.
I will
Muchas
now give
gracias.
the floor to Guillermo Cepeda. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, how are you? Good afternoon, everyone. It is a great pleasure to greet you in this panel, which is very promising with the questions and because of the quality of the speakers that we have in this panel. I would like to thank Mexico Evalúa for the invitation as well as the foundation. It is a pleasure for me to be here to talk about retributive justice and restorative justice. This idea that restorative justice has the challenge of calling all people that have been part of a conflict and even working on it in situ, in the place where this was committed. It started in community topics and then it evolved to criminal areas. As the video mentioned, we help the victims in the grieving process with a full repair, not only in the judicial interest, but also in their needs, their personal needs, which also goes beyond the repair of the damage, and it's been very successful in different topics in family areas. According to the National Census of Justice application in 2021 by INEGI, 92% of the alternative methods that are being applied in the country, in Mexico, 92% is mediation, and then we have arbitration, and then we have conciliation with 4%. And this is a great challenge that we have in the city of Guadalajara. Mr. Raul Calvo Soler mentioned in a conference yesterday how we have this, how can we certify this group of capabilities so that we can call it restorative justice when we are doing this transformation of the relationship of the conflict, this emotional alchemy, as some people call it, that we can use it in this regard. And one of the questions that we have for this afternoon is how is that the articulation of the systems helps boost and make justice more efficient with an approach that is centered on victims, and how can we improve the processes of individual and collective repair through the innovation and the use of technology, not only in the methodologies that the arbitrators have that have created some dynamics in the different congresses and alternative methods, where they are sharing these very powerful tools that are also boosted by the use of technology, but also through the challenge that it implies. What are some of the best practices identified? And I think that this space is very good in order to share them, and what lessons we can learn in Mexico from these best practices. What are the best challenges for the understanding of restorative justice, and what are the first steps for its establishment? As our facilitator mentioned, we have 3 specialists here who are going to participate. Marta Galicia Osoro from the Technological Institute in Mexico, who was also trained in the University George Mason, and she is in the Clinic of Alternative Methods. She is an independent consultant in different organizations. Also, Gema Barona, permanent researcher in the Institute of Technology from Basque Country, and also Fatima Gamboa from X Justice for Women. It is a great pleasure for me to have you here. We have great expectations from your interventions, and we are starting to talk about this topic on justice transformation that will help us to have a better justice in our communities. So we would ask Marta Angélica Galicia Osorio if you can please start your presentation. Thank you very much, Guillermo. Good afternoon, Gema, Fatima, and everyone here. I would like to thank you for the invitation. It is a pleasure for me, and I think that what I'm going to say is always very important, and in 10 minutes, I'm not going to fulfill all the needs of information that we have here, but I think that this can be a good start. I would like to talk about how the participation of victims worked in the justice system, the previous justice system before 2008, where we started the new criminal system. And what happened is when there was going to be a pardon, when this was allowed in the criminal area, the lawyer that represented the offender along with the experts and the district attorney's office, they were trying to reach an agreement through this pardon. So if you see here, people that are directly involved were erased or were removed, were out of these decisions that in the end of the day were going to affect their lives directly. So from the moment of the reform of the National Code of Criminal Procedures, and we also generate the National Law of Alternative Conflict Resolution Mechanisms in Criminal Law, that's when other possibilities opened in order to allow the participation of the victim, of course, but also for the perpetrator as the person that is responsible. And it is here where these principles of restorative justice, of repairing the damage and satisfying the needs of the involved people, they can materialize those on the law. Why? Because it is them, both parts, who can propose and determine and define with the help of a facilitator, first, what damages this offense has caused, because one offense can create different damages in different people. What does it mean for me to receive certain offense can be different for someone else, and I may have different needs for the repair of the damage. And this obviously is something that a judge is not something that is within their scope for them to be able to do it. So with these reforms in which they allow an agreement or the changes in the procedure, is that people involved will be able to participate through these facilitators in the restorative procedures that are already trained in order to identify their needs and how they need this to be done, and they are going to support them to reach these conclusions. Unfortunately, it is a practice that, as Mr. Guillermo mentioned, this is something that is not done anymore. One, because there are not enough trained facilitators in restorative law, because it's not the same, and no one knows these processes. And when I say no one, I mean the different district attorneys' offices and the same operators of the system do not understand what these parties should be doing in this restorative or retributive justice doing. And they do not understand why they should go, and they reach an agreement that sometimes they do not understand why they are doing this, because they don't understand that the parties are establishing their needs, which is not different to the technicalities and what a lawyer can establish in an agreement. So sometimes because they want to make this more agile, or because they want to close a case, they do not inform the parties, and when they report to the parties, they don't know what they need to report to them. So they don't really understand what a restorative process is, what arbitration is, what they can expect from this procedure. So this has been decreasing. The process itself is only 3%, as it was mentioned. The people who can use these restorative procedures is only 3%. So this means that this has not been spread, and this culture of stopping penalizations and not requiring a great punishment that is going to end this offense is actually a lie, because the need is that the parties are still there no matter how many years they are going to have to be there for a ruling. It's not going to be of satisfaction for the victim, the perpetrator, or the community, because you are not allowing it to be the proper tools for the person to change this situation. So I think this is one of the greatest challenges, to be able to give the operators of the system the information of what is the philosophy of this alternative means and restorative justice, and also than going to the people, the users, or the people that need these procedures.
We need a lot of aware reasoning, both of the system's operators and of the heights from prosecutors, decision makers, because sometimes we have states where things started to well, the Mexican federal state of Baja California, Querétaro. We could mention several ones in which we were having progress, but then the administration changes, the heads are changed. Many people say their farewells, people who have already established a working way, and we start from scratch without having any guidance, without our understanding the mechanisms and what they are designed for. I think that we have waste human resources a lot, and we always need, of course, investment both in infrastructure, but above all in training and awareness raising of all those involved in these processes. And in here we can have technology, and we can show successful cases through videos. Of course, right now we have used a lot during this pandemic electronic media for these processes. This has worked, and this is a way to engage technologies. But I don't, but not just. We can help you and use social media so we can disseminate these ideas, these small examples and success cases. Many things can be done, but our main challenge is to support people so they get to know these mechanisms that would change that mindset, that by punishing people we're going to end we're going to end up with a crime. I don't think this is working. Even if we have the army in the streets, we have had people lynching criminals, and even if sentences have been increased, so we have to have a different approach of justice administration. I hope we will have the opportunity for this. Thank you very much, Guillermo. Thank you, Marta and Angelica. Thank you for your intervention. Now we will give the floor to Heima Barona Martinez. So welcome. The floor is yours. I am afraid your microphone is silenced. Yes, I think you can listen to me now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening in Spain. Thank you to the organizers for the invitation by Guillermo to be here with my women colleagues. And I want to resume what Marta was saying. I think it's very appropriate. I'm going to be speaking from a rather European and more particularly Spanish perspective. I think that what Marta has just said, these are questions that, and I would dare say from what we know in terms of the Restorative Justice European Forum in all of the countries, we do not know the performance of judicial operators above all in terms of the restorative justice principles. However, we have got some international legal principles which are universal, and I mean the United Nations principles of 2002 with a new manual of restorative justice manual, so from 2020 for its second edition, and we are detailing here, and we have even a new chapter in terms of serious crimes. And I think this is very important to highlight. Restorative justice arose in Canada in the mid-70s as justice for petty crimes and also for minor crimes, something that we considered in a globalized way in the other 5 continents, of course, with a different impact. But the truth is that restorative justice has been extended to all other countries, and it has extended always marginally to adult and serious crimes and very serious crimes, I would dare say. And as we were saying, restorative justice is not a transitional justice, while transitional justice can be conducted with a restorative aim. But as Marta has said, a restorative justice aims at changing the system restorative justice is complemented because we will always need a criminal code establishing what a crime is and what is not. However, that criminal code can consider other type of responses. We can have a criminalization so long as that behavior is as serious enough, respecting all of the minimum principles for it to be considered in the criminal code. But that does not mean that we must have first of all, freedom restricting sentence. For instance, we already spoke of a third way, and this is repair. And also we can use this in criminal law, as Marta said, it is a repair that can be individualized for the specific case. And there is a third leg, so to speak, which is community, the closer the community. And it's important to highlight this, otherwise it's going to be confused with mediation. Restorative justice is not mediation and it is not therapy. This is very important to say this. There is a risk for restorative justice to be therapy. No, these are therapies. They can be therapies, but restorative justice, it teaches us to administer justice and not to have therapy. Of course, this can have therapeutical effects, but this should not be compared to forgiveness, which is a very complex matter, and forgiveness can be in a restorative program if the people there are involved, but it's not always the case. So the potential of the restorative justice is willingness, and this is what makes it different from classical restorative justice. Is voluntary and not just the author, but also these are representatives of the community, not just through the facilitator, of course, but it makes a lot of sense, and that's what we're trying to promote, specifically in the Basque country and in the rest of Spain, through circles, conferences, panels, which are not just bilateral mediation, arbitration, and it's important to consider the justice concept, not abstractly, but that the one that stems from the injustice undergone by the victim, that can express it in their own words, which is not the same as the classical justice that revolves around a punishment, which is to listen and to repair. It's not mind justice, as Tim Charlton was saying. It's maybe the less walked and the most complex path, because it requires of time. So we cannot say that we have restorative models if we do not have investment in those restorative models. If we really don't have training that way, it's very important. The European field, the repair of victims, the 2012 directive for all of the European Union has considered restorative justice within the rights of victims. And this is very important because restorative justice was not born there. It was not born in the framework of the victims' rights, but with the time and the development and the different contents, it has made us see that victims are interested in this. Why? Because it is a justice that allows entry to victims, first of all, not with set on stone vision, and it allows for people to come out of the cliche with which justice, the classical criminal justice, has trapped them, and allows us to see that victims are there, especially for serious crimes, and that the idea of repair is together with prevention and the powers of law. We have seen that prevention is completely unrelated to repair, and we teach students special positive, negative repair. And when we hear and we listen to victims, because they want to take part in this because of pro-social purposes, because and never again against anybody else. And in here we also have the transformation idea. Therefore, restorative or transformative justice, if it is identified with an interpersonal matter, or even personal and personal healing, it's going to lose that justice. But the idea of restorative justice is not the abstract justice, as a religious master philosopher was saying. This is a justice administration of justice specific of a specific person, of a specific body, either a woman or an intersexual perspective, of course, so we can say, what are we going to do with that damage so we can transform the conditions that made it possible, that enabled it. And finally, this is a very complex topic. I will go to the technological field in which we have published in the victimology review, victimology, possible translation, and a survey, a limited survey that we conducted during the pandemic in terms of how restorative justice was administered through video conference platforms. And results are paradoxical in nature, because while they are being well used in terms of preparatory meetings, we have even had programs in which we can see people in circles within the video conference. The truth is that even if this has a positive aspects, and even as a way of communication, this can allow to think people further, not speak in a certain way, and we can prolong the reflection process if wanted. However, this has very frustrating results in terms of face-to-face communication. And face-to-face communication is very important for restorative justice. However, technology has deficiencies in this sense, and it's some kind of oxymoron not being able to meet face-to-face. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hema. Thank you very much for your intervention. You have very interesting lines of reflection, very important ones as well. Now we will give the floor to Fatima Leonor Gamboa Estrella. The floor is yours. Good afternoon. Hello, how are you doing? Hey, my colleague from ITAM. I'm sorry, I forgot your name, Guillermo. I would like to, in the same terms, I would like to speak about the contributions by indigenous justice to Western models of justice, including retributive justice. And who would say that under a racist and discriminating system, that in indigenous justice can make the state justice being innovated? And from what we have heard, and especially my women colleagues from Yucatan, and they have helped us to think again about the concept of justice if we are looking for a response that are effective face to violence that we are facing as women, because most people cannot have access to justice systems. So I think it's important so we can think again about justice, to consider the facts that are creating injustices, which acts are to be prevented, who are the perpetrators of these acts, in which context they are taking place, and especially, as my colleague was saying, on which borders. And we have to analyze whether these acts are governed by a systematic history of exclusion, colonialism, and the lack of diversity, this splendid ludus removal that maintains the status quo here. So what's justice? If a woman victim is a trans woman, or is an indigenous woman, or if it's a lesbian woman, how will repair take place if this is not just an individual right, but these are also collective rights? And how are we going to repair or prevent those injustices? And if they are not considered in a specific temporality, this comes from a story that repeats over and over. So from this, we know that for Western law, justice, and I think that's the concepts that we all have in mind, those of us who studied law, so it's give to each their own. But if you see, this means that there is someone above all others, and who is deciding what everyone deserves, and also implies that there is an order and a status quo that is to be preserved. And unfortunately, in that order, we have had exclusion and discrimination. And from here, we are breaking up with a justice between equals because there is someone who has more power and defending an established order. So what is justice? What I want to share with you is the concept of justice of some communities in which we have been working with Mayas and Yucatan. And justice here, the word justice does not exist as such, but we have Maloptan. The Maloptan word, and using a very bad description, this is some kind of like the good or the right word. What comes out from the word to be worded through voice to enunciate something appropriate. If you see in this description, there is no there is no someone, a subject. This is what comes from the voice, from the body. For the good word, this is about the voice, taking the voice out. And by doing this, we can take the experience out, the expectation out, the need out, the whole of the body out, so the history. And this makes indigenous systems to be very oral in nature, because in writing we're going to get lost. In writing we will stop listening to each other, and listening is another of the pivotal elements for indigenous justice. And I'm going to quote Baba Siana, Justice Mayan promoter, and what she says to justice is and what she wants to live well. And she says she says we want them to listen to us. We want them to pay attention to what is happening to us. We want them to know what we are living. I am a person equal to the others, and I deserve to be happy. Listening and voice through dialogue allow to place in an agreement space and experience, but also to recover something that can be expressed by, but not only by voice, feelings. For this, Mayan women are part of justice because feelings are part of healing. Women who seek a community authorities do not necessarily go there and enunciate conceptually violence or a crime in an abstract and personalized way. Women go there and declare to the authorities what hurts them, what makes them sad. And again, and here we are recovering this feeling, what they need to be at ease, what they need to be happy. So through this feeling that is initiated through this voice, through the dialogue process and listening, what is created through indigenous justice, or one of the important components that is created is empathy, which is another of the characteristics of indigenous justice. What do women want from authority? Do they want a punishment, prison, vengeance? Some of them do. But for others, it's not necessarily the case. They want to teach something, and they want to create a learning. And as Hema was saying, they want to prevent this from happening again, because what happens to me is going to happen to the family, and it's going to happen to the community. So we see how punishments are not necessarily individualized punishments. These are punishments in which we have the community, and through what we call chapeo, community work, like sweeping a school, we're going to be generating speeches that are important for women, because they place the responsible person at the center and not the victim. And in terms of gender, this is important because we know that patriarchy has made it very easy to violence authors, mainly men, to never appear, in the speech of the different types of violence, and we place at the center this person. And I'm afraid that I won't be able to tell about more elements, but I think it's very important to start to think about justice again to think about justices again. So through what we need and what we want, depending on the context of the body that we are occupying, we can really be inclusive and really achieve equality and non-discrimination. Without this starting from the beginning, from the origin, what justice is and for whom, I think this is going to be very difficult, and we're going to continue going round and round the punitive justice system. Thank you very much, Fatima. Thank you very much for your intervention. All three interventions give us pathways for research, for reflection. And I think that we can integrate them in a very positive way when we reflect upon what has been said here around the topic of access to justice, as we were, as Martha and Angelica was saying at the beginning. This access to justice that has must have an open justice approach, but also an accessible justice. We have to understand the terms in which we are following this process, a pivotal element of restorative justice, the protagonism of a criminal case, as we were mentioning, but also in the community setting, it is being applied very successfully in family law. The challenge that Martha was mentioning, which is in our system, sometimes is to re-victimize the victim. The standardized model, which is only being implemented in 9-10 Mexican federal states, and in the rest of the country, we are receiving the file, and it's sent to the investigation unit. And after a revictimization, first we go to the next agency. As Heima and Martin Angelica said, the institutional system and the institutionalized system is related to the criminal agreement to repair, but it is more than arbitration. However, the National Criminal Code in its Article 187 says that the repair agreement goes only for unintentional crimes. And if we generalize here, if we simplify, for a non-violent wealth crime, that's why we have very little such cases, and they require further time, more training, more resources. And the code establishes 30 days for our repair agreement. We can extend it for 30 more days, but in the case of the Mexican Federal State of Jalisco, in which we have trained arbitrators who have followed courses in Spain and other places as well, it seems that we only have an agreement, the repair agreement, but also for serious intentional crimes, they want to introduce restorative justice outside any legal term, even with, as it has been said, we do not need an award. This has to be fully voluntary. And also in some criminal procedures, we can have a preparatory hearings to persuade the parties. They're going to sell to the parties because they see no benefit. Okay, this is over. Forgiveness, repair agreement has been reached. But the relevance for the mourning of some people, for victims of who have lost their lives, a limb, for instance. And this goes for the person, for everyone in this process. We have to work more on the criminal system to open further windows for restorative justice and not limited to only repair. 140,000 repair agreements are reached in a year in Mexico. And institutionally, we should work on windows and apply the standardized model to end up with revictimization. And the cases presented by Fatima, the original community justice that comes from the indigenous justice has this perfectly compatible component: orality, empathy. Like the lawyer saying, they're working with cases that the arbitrator, the conciliator in terms of restorative justice, will work with speeches, with narratives, and well, an attorney only asks a yes or no. Otherwise, the theory of the case is not going to hold. In here, we work with narratives, taking into account the needs of the parties. And as we were saying, the legal system is going to focus on this, and that's why we get the justice we get, because the Violence Act is based on the perception that they were treated without justice, and this is an unsolved case. This is like paving a crater, and for the next eruption, this is going to explode. So we have a very deep lines of reflection given by the panelists. I remember someone from Barcelona in a course, and she was saying, what does the law say the victim needs and can have access to an attorney, a free attorney? What do victims say? Why me? The law says that we need an emotional support center. What do the victims say? There are, in terms of their own needs, I am vulnerable, I am at risk, so they can attack me again. So the victims' concerns are not being addressed by legislation, and I think restorative justice is going to bridge that gap, is going to address that gap, and between the traditional vision of solving the case and the urgent need of this restorative justice to address the core of the conflict and reestablish somehow the social tissue, which is the great contribution, besides of caring for victims of restorative justice. So we can continue reflecting upon this in Mexico this evening, in Spain, about this agenda. And I hope that we will still have this. Thank you to the organizers for this space. We invite you to continue with us in this forum. Thank you very much for your participation. Greetings, everyone.
Muchas gracias a todos aquellos que nos han seguido en este segundo Foro Internacional de la Innovación en la Justicia, en su segundo día. Han sido hasta ahorita muy fructíferas y muy interesantes todos los paneles, y así seguiremos durante la tarde. Tomaremos un receso para continuar a las 15 horas con la sesión de justicia climática, la responsabilidad de los tribunales, la responsabilidad histórica y su responsabilidad actual. Muchas gracias.